Bernardo Bertolucci's 1970 classic The Conformist, or Il Conformista, is a political drama that, through its themes and narrative, employs a commentary on the psychology of fascism and conformism. The protagonist and anti-hero is Marcello Clerici, a would-be fascist that exhumes an inability to conform with normal reality. The film follows Marcello and his life leading up to the involvement in the assassination of his former university professor. Time is disrupted in his non-linear narrative. A series of flashbacks reveal Clerici's character throughout the film, and through his sexual confusion, neurosis, and apparent self-loathing, his inability to conform is explained. In this sequence, Marcello travels to collect his mother so they can both go visit his father. In this sequence analysis, I will explore the use of mise-en-scène and cinematography that Bertolucci employs throughout this section of the film to demonstrate insight into the character and demonstrate the state of fascist Italy under dictator Benito Mussolini's office.
Insomma, chi siete? Perché mi seguite?
Pura coincidenza. Non seguivo voi. Evidentemente andiamo tutte e due allo stesso posto. Permettete una domanda. Mi chiamate per caso Clerici?
Sì, sono il dottor Clerici. E voi chi siete?
Agente servizio speciale Manganiello. Mi manda il colonnello.
Dentro.
Grazie.
Alberi! Che disordine. Questa casa sembra un letamaio.
Sì, è un peccato.
Alberi! Forza, Manganiello, così non li raggiungiamo più.
Più di così non posso, dottore. La strada è scivolosa. Hanno solo mezz'ora di vantaggio.
Parlate meno, spiegatemi.
Ostia, come si slitta.
Lo so, me ne frego. Adesso dobbiamo solo pensare a salvarla.
Io vi capisco, ma se poi ci rompiamo il cranio, cosa abbiamo concluso? Dottore?
Camerata!
Il colonnello mi ha incaricato di dirvi che...
Dopo, aspettate qui. Mamma, per piacere copriti. Non mi va di vederti mezza nuda.
Ah, che figlio moralista mi ritrovo. Sai, ho fatto un sogno. Entravi da quella porta, ti sedevi sul mio letto e mi davi un bacio.
Beh, non ti vesti?
Che ora è?
È tardi, non andiamo a trovare papà?
Ma perché non muore? Risparmieremo i soldi della clinica. Ne ho così pochi.
Vendi la macchina.
No, la macchina non la vendo.
To analyse this sequence, I will be breaking it down into the three locations that are used, which are the street, the home, and the car. The sequence commences in a state of journey for Marcello, literally and figuratively. He travels to his mother's home within a set of wide, eye-level shots that all share the same attribute of the Dutch angle. The camera is tilted to a degree that the horizon line is not parallel to the bottom of the frame. This composition is fundamental in expressing Marcello's mental state. The Dutch angle, in cinema, often possesses connotations of unease. In its essence, it is a cinematic technique that is used for dramatic effect within a scene. In this sequence, it helps convey Marcello's paranoia in his thoughts that someone is following him, and through this, insight into his character's moral compass is provided. This composition begins to indulge into a plot point that a later scene confirms. Later, Marcello confesses to a priest and asks forgiveness for a crime he has not yet committed. This scene itself suggests that Marcello is morally torn and thus hesitant about his task to assassinate the professor. This sequence, through its Dutch angles, is imperative in expanding upon this. It suggests that he may also feel that he has no choice in the acceptance of the task. To conform, he must assassinate someone who does not conform and actively challenges the fascist politics that the film is analysing. His inability to conform is highlighted by his paranoia, and thus through this particular choice in framing. Later, in shot 4, it is confirmed that nobody was following him, and so the camera straightens to become horizontal. His paranoia is also amplified by the camera movement in shot 3. The camera tracks Marcello. It is evident by the slight shakiness of the camera that this shot was achieved with a handheld recording technique rather than through the stability that a track or crane could provide. Handheld cameras are often used to create tensions and reveal wariness, as the shaking mimics the shivers one would exert when scared. Throughout the film, the colour palette is imperative into determining Marcello's mental state, thoughts and feelings. Much of the early film reflects the same melancholy colours of the street. The colour grading desaturates the shots to a point that they appear nearly to be monochromatic, creating the appearance of flat images and the feeling of much negative space. The muted earth tones, particularly of beige, are reflexive of the film's political context as a whole. Italy is under a strict fascist regime, where compliance with order is imperative. Marcello's costume is significant throughout these shots, as although he is dressed in a muted grey, the darkness of the colour of his suit makes him stand out from his surroundings. The modernist but otherwise plain mise-en-scène of the streets allow for Marcello's dull exterior to stand out within such wide frames. Marcello visually disrupts the order through his appearance, further amplifying his difficulties in conforming. The entrance into Marcello's mother's property directly contrasts the appearance of the street. He is immediately plunged into a new aesthetic that features more vibrant, saturated colours. This drastic aesthetic change could be argued to have two different meanings. Either one, this scene may be to exhume a sense of comfort, as Marcello is now in a place of familiarity that he can be himself in, or two, the complete opposite. The colour temperatures of his mother's home are mixed rather than consistent, creating a surplus of green and yellow hues that create an almost sickly feeling. When applied with the context that is provided within later scenes, it is known that Marcello had a troubled childhood. Marcello was sexually abused by an older man, Lino. Memories of his childhood may harbour some resentment within Marcello, as his parents were not able to protect him from the event that could be argued as the beginning of his disassociation from society, where his sexual confusion catalysed his inability to conform. The colours that feature prominently in Marcello's mother's bedroom are much more suited to the visual style that wants to elicit beauty. These are now pastel colours that complement each other rather than clash. In her 1992 article, Józefa Losicki discusses Il Conformista's general use of stylistic excesses. These are prominent in the bedroom, the final 5 shots of the sequence. These are generic intensifications that emphasise the self-conscious and artificial, lush visual tone of the movie and turned it into a pastiche of eclectic cinematic and artistic styles. Marcello's mother exerts power and authority. She is dressed in furs and pearls, expressing wealth. She is the prime example of one who does conform into the society. In this part of the sequence, camera movement is extremely minimal, only moving once in shot 10 to reframe Marcello as he sits down. This ensures that there is no negative space left above his head. This lack of negative space results in a mise-en-scène that exerts a somewhat homely feel, grounding Marcello as a character. In this scene, he converses with his mother about personal matters. Despite the topic of conversation being negative, the visual cue of Marcello in a domestic situation separates himself from his job role as a member of the Secret Service. he attempts to problem solve with his mother in reference to his father's hospitalization.
Ma perché non muore? Risparmieremmo i soldi della clinica. Ne ho così pochi.
Vendi la macchina.
No, la macchina non la vendo.
The simplicity of the use of the mid-shot where two characters are in frame as they indulge in conversation continues with Marcello's grounding. His body language, however, suggests a rigidness, especially in comparison to his mother, who is much more relaxed. This expresses how he is and would be an anomaly when engaging in domestic life. Towards the end of the sequence, iconography of young animals is used to provide further insight into Marcello's character. He becomes annoyed at the whimpering of one of his mother's pets, a puppy, and so he hits it. This is the first time that Marcello's cruelty is exhibited in such a subtle way. It is not a plot point, nor is it acknowledged by another character. It is simply spontaneous and reveals to a spectator that elements of his cruelty are simply instinctual rather than planned. This makes it feel that there is a much more malicious side to Marcello. This gesture introduces the concept of the two sides of Marcello, the neutral and the bad. A common visual theme throughout the film is the process of shadow and light. In the car, Marcello is framed in extreme close-up, where daylight illuminates the right side of his face, while the other remains in shadow. This implies a personality split. The movement in this shot is also minimal, but effective in the exploring of the space that the characters reside in at that moment. It is a track to the right that first focuses on Marcello, but then travels to Manganiello, another member of the Secret Service. As the shot is delivered, in a close-up, a sense of claustrophobia is exhibited. The men are together in a small space, and as Manganiello is behind the wheel of the car and in turn in control of the space, he possesses the power. The emotions that both men exert further exhibit this. Marcello is shown as worried and panicking, whereas Manganiello remains calm and is a figure of composure. The camera movement exhibits the power dynamic between the two men and presents Marcello, the man who does not conform, as the weaker of the two. The shot is then exchanged for a wide establishing shot that shows the car driving through a snowy exterior. The exterior is consistent with the same melancholy colour palette as mentioned before, with the exception of the headlights, which eject a muddy yellow hue and disturb the composition. As the headlights belong to the car that he is sat in, it is apparent that once again Marcello has disturbed the order and visual aesthetic. To conclude, it is evident that this sequence serves as a character study into Marcello and introduces many of his qualities and faults and applies them to the world that surrounds him. These attributes are imperative in the understanding of the decisions that he makes. The cinematic techniques that Bertolucci employs throughout the sequence provide, through Marcello, the psychology of Il Conformista, an extensive reference to its political and historical context. Through Marcello, a commentary is constructed that questions the ethical connotations surrounding the film's themes. The film is peculiarly oniric in feel, providing material for psychoanalytical readings which explore beyond Bertolucci's conscious design. Marcello's aesthetic disruption within otherwise orderly compositions and mise-en-scène allow for these psychoanalytical readings to take flight, without being too overt or direct in expressing Bertolucci's critical gaze. The dazzling compositions seem to comment on the concern for surface beauty, which parallels Marcello's desire for the appearance of normality. Through Marcello, the director is able to question what normality is or was, and whether it is morally correct or not. Marcello's goal is normality, but Marcello is not constructed as a man whose goals are entirely worthy.